Tonight, state lawmakers are getting new insight into why some Michigan communities are opening their doors to data centers. Good evening. I'm David Andrews.
And I'm Ann Emmerich. Local officials from the West Michigan community of Gaines Township gave their testimony today about the ins and outs of data center deals. News 10's Riley Connell joins us in studio now with more.
Yeah, Ann and David, the House Subcommittee on Corporate Subsidies and State Investments convened today for its fourth meeting on data centers. Gaines Township leaders spoke about a proposed Microsoft data center that's been in the works since 2024, but the project has been met with pushback from township residents who have voiced concerns over potential noise disruption, environmental impact, and increased utility costs. Community Development Director Dan Wells told lawmakers the township is working with Microsoft to address those concerns. Several lawmakers cited their own concerns about artificial intelligence and how much regulatory control local governments should have.
I think when we're talking about a technology that has the ability to take away hundreds of thousands or millions of jobs, to totally disrupt the economy, the global, global war, or even, but also electricity rates that affect the whole state. I believe that is a state level decision. Do you not agree with that?
That solution, I think, is a much bigger picture, probably at the federal level or at the state level. I'm not a legislator. You guys are the experts in this. But it would seem to me that there could be consumer protections put in place. I don't know that our decision to build a piece of basically infrastructure, digital infrastructure, addresses that problem.
Other lawmakers on the committee argued the U.S. should embrace artificial intelligence. Representative Jamie Green said she would rather see the U.S. get control of AI than China. Back to you, David.
All right, Riley, thank you. The subcommittee will open the floor for public comment on data centers next week. That meeting will take place on Wednesday, April 22nd at 10:30 a.m.